going to call the regular Board of Aldermen meeting to order on Tuesday, September 24th at 2019. It is 7:43 p.m. here in the Aldermanic Chamber. First, I'd like to welcome the new city clerk to our meeting. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking on this most important job. I would ask the clerk to offer the prayer and Alderman Lopez to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us, God.
Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Gidge.
Present.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Present.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Laws.
Here.
Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Karen. Alderwoman Kelly. Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderwoman Malizi Goya.
Present.
Alderman Tenza.
Present.
Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons.
Here.
Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
We have 14 present.
Alderwoman Kelly was not able to join us this evening. Mayor Donchis, Mayor Donchis and Corporation Counsel Steve Bolton are also in attendance. Mayor, do you wish to address the board?
Yes, Madam President. There are a few items on the agenda that I wanted to address and a couple other things. First, I think most importantly, we have R-19-172, which would apply $4.5 million of the revenue surplus to a reduction of the tax rate. This has been recommended by the Budget Committee. This is consistent and similar to what we've done in previous years. We applied $4.5 million of last year's surplus to the tax rate. We estimate revenues conservatively to make sure we come in above the estimates. And this is how at least this portion of the surplus is generated. And I believe, and I think you agree, owe it to the taxpayers to apply a good part of the surplus to tax rate reduction. Next, I do need to address R-18-102, which is the proposed contract in the police department. Now, this is not to take anything away from the police department or the great job that the officers do for the city. But this is a group of civilian employees, and the main objection I have to this contract and why I believe it should not be approved is that it increases the payout for unused sick time substantially. The city, over a period of years, has tried to reduce this unfunded liability. And it is an unfunded liability because there's no money behind this obligation. There's nothing in the bank and so we have to spend this money as it becomes due. And it reduces, when it does become due, it reduces the amount that we can spend on services, police officers, ELL teachers, whatever else. Now, over the period of the last 15 years, the city worked to reduce the obligation which the city has to pay out these unfunded liabilities. The standard previously had been 720 hours payout for sick time unused. That is a third of a year's pay. So over the years, for nearly all civilian employees in the city, that was reduced to up to 20% of all accumulated sick time, which amounts to a maximum of about 20% of pay. And right at this point, virtually all civilian employees in the city are at 20% of pay. Now, if all city employees were given the 720 hours, it's 1/3 of the annual payroll. That's a $60 million unfunded liability. The employees in this civilian group lawyers, and some other people, entered the workforce with the expectation that they would be paid only 20%. This was a provision negotiated and paid for by some concession by the city 15 years ago. And this whole entire group of employees began and has worked their entire career with the expectation that they would get a 20% payout. Now, the proposed contract would extend that to 720 hours. This would be the second group of employees. Now, there was a special reason for the last one, but which it's not necessary to get into now, but this is the second group of employees. There are thousands of other civilian employees, other lawyers in the school department, in City Hall, throughout city government that did not have this benefit. People in the private sector generally don't get paid any sick time. We're paying out about 20% of pay, in addition to pensions, in addition to payout for unused vacation time. I think it is a bad precedent and a mistake to approve this, and I would ask you to consider that point of view. Next, Madam President, on a happier note, Money Magazine gave us the award again. We're in the top 100 best places to live in the United States. We're not number one, as we've been a couple of times, but we did pretty well. We are third in New England, first in New Hampshire. I think it's a credit to everybody who's a part of the community and works so hard to make Nashua a great place to live, our school department, our Board of Aldermen, all of the volunteers that we have working in so many areas. So I always feel good when we get that award. We've gotten many others, but this is a new one, and I'm very happy that we got it. I wanted to next, Madam President, announce that we are working to create a mental health task force to address the issue of suicide prevention and other mental health issues. The first step there, Madam President, and you and I and the Vice President have talked about this. The first step will be to hold on October 21st a public training regarding the signs of depression and suicide risk. This is something that Alderman Lopez has been advocating, so that's set up for the 21st, and you'll be hearing more details about that later. Next, the significant step forward in terms of organizing cities, at least to have a common front with respect to many issues, state aid and the like, was a meeting of mayors and city managers that we hosted here at City Hall. We had 8 different cities of the 13 attend here in Nashua. 2 had something come up at the last minute, but we had mayors and/or city managers from Manchester, Concord, Keene, Rochester, Franklin, Lebanon, Claremont. The discussion was very positive, and we agreed that we should definitely be working together on many different fronts. And there is another meeting going to be scheduled in Concord come sometime in November. That's yet to be scheduled, but that is something that I believe can, in the end, be of great help to Nashua. Finally, as we talked about many of the volunteers and people that work hard on behalf of the community, we have a lot of appointments to approve tonight. I'm not sure, I think I've got everybody who's actually here to be sworn in, but we have Gloria McCarthy, Amber Logue, June Lemon, Kim Regan, Carl Andrade, and I think Ed Weber was here, but he might have left. I hope I haven't missed anyone. I want to thank all of them for their agreeing, their commitment to the city and to the community, and all of the other people who are working so hard on behalf, in our official boards and in many other respects, with respect to it on behalf of our community. And with that, Madam President, I conclude.
Thank you. Responses to the remarks of the mayor. Alderman Lopez.
I just wanted to thank the mayor for his leadership with the formation of the mental health task force, as well as the mental health first aid training. I think we are unintentionally tone deaf when we laud our city's progress in being top 100 best place to live in this region or that, when there are people in our neighborhoods, our friends, our family, that are struggling with the will. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the effort that's being made. I believe this to be a regional issue. It's not specific to Nashua. It's a larger phenomenon that's taking shape, and I think this is an example where this is another example where Nashua needs to lead. We are regional leaders in the public health sector, and I look forward to the work ahead of us that will make our city a better place to live for everyone.
Anyone else? Responses to remarks of the mayor? Seeing none, recognition period.
There is none.
Reading minutes of previous meetings. There being no objection, I'll declare the minutes of the Board of Aldermen meetings of September 10th, 2019 accepted, placed on file, and the reading suspended. Communications requiring only procedural actions and written reports from liaisons.
There is none.
Period for public comment relative to items expected to be acted upon this evening. We have one speaker, Fred Teboom.
Thank you, Madam President. My name is Fred Teboom. I reside at 24 Cheyenne Drive, and I wish to address the communication on your agenda where you're asked to approve the design concept for the Performance Arts Center. Let me talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let me first talk about the good of the Performance Arts Center. You have an outstanding architect on the contract. That's very good. You have a theater operator who requires absolutely no subsidy on a 5-year extendable contract. No subsidy. That's very good. And you replaced the Duncan Webb study design from the fire trap audience chamber on the 2nd floor. That's gone. That was a fire trap. That's good. Let's talk about the bad. The Telegraph featured an article about the design a few months ago. It was really fantastic. That was Icon's, the architect's, schematic design, their initial design. However, and I'll get to cost in a minute, because costs had to be cut, the audience chamber had to be rotated. Instead of it staged inside the 4-story building next to the Alex Shoe store, the stage is now next to the Serve restaurant. So the whole chamber of the audience is parallel to Main Street. Obviously, that reduces costs because you don't have to modify as much of the 4-story building. But the theater space itself has been reduced in the current concept from 52,000 feet to 41,000 feet. That's a significant reduction. Therefore, the audience of 750 seats in this theater, which is required by the operator to operate without a subsidy, 750 seats, the 750 seats are more compressed. As an example, in the drawings that I've seen, the audience chamber of 85 feet has been reduced to 67 feet, the length of the chamber. That's a 21% reduction. Therefore, it creates a much steeper tiering of the seating. And the top seat in the back I call a nosebleed seat. And obviously, the viewing angles from the side are more compressed. The view angle into the stage is not as good from the side seats. There are less features. For example, what is really outstanding in the original design, there is no outdoor roof terrace. That's to be an option, but not included in the current design. There's less loading dock. There's many other changes I won't go into tonight. There is, and this is significant, there is no rental income in the retail space to compensate for the annual $50,000 loss of taxable income when this property, Alex Shoe Store, was commercial property. There's no compensating retail income because the retail floor is gone. There's a gallery that's going to be, I believe, partially in the basement and the lobby. And there was very, very little public input to this design. I attended most of the meetings of the steering committee, and I also reviewed all the proposals. But most of the time, I was the only public member there. So for Tim Cummins to say that there was a lot of public participation, there wasn't. Now let's talk about the ugly. The cost projected initially was $15.5 million. That was the bond. That was authorized. Icon's original design, the schematic design, was featured in the Telegraph, was priced at $24.4 million. It then went through a reduction because the committee said to reduce it. It reduced the design to $23.1 million. Didn't get to the 15.5. So now the architect rotated chamber, like I explained earlier, and now the cost is projected at $22.3 million. So $1 million reduction from the schematic design to option one, $1 million less, to option two, another $1 million less. $23.1 million, which includes $1 million to make what you call street changes. I didn't make these numbers up. You'll find them in the minutes of 26 June of the committee. Typically, though, none of these costs were presented to the personnel, to the Economic Development Committee, which last week reviewed this design. Costs never came up. Alderman Jerry, who normally asks about costs, didn't bring up costs. And no costs were presented. So I'm announcing them here. It's a lot of money. The lowest cost, which is $22.3 million, is $6.8 million above the $15.5 million, or a 44% increase. That's enormous. I won't go into how that happened. I've addressed that before. Basically, it was a lot of chicanery pulled with the original estimate. But that's what people think this thing's going to cost, $15.5 million. Nowhere close. Nowhere close. There'll be more costs if the Pearl Street streetscape is improved to make theater access safer, specifically make it a one-direction street. So lots of people cross the street, they're not taking their lives in their hand. And making the sidewalk wider, like 5 feet, which is what both of which the architect recommended. Now, as I mentioned, is an excellent architect. Also, there's been absolutely no information presented, now or any time previous, about the charitable contributions in terms of dollar figures. I've heard a $2.5 million projection, but no one has yet announced a penny of what has actually been committed. You got till next year to get $4 million, or you got to change the resolution, or the project ends. There's been absolutely no information presented about the new market tax credits, which have been projected to be between 4.1 million, between 4 million and 5.2 million. Now, we got the 2.5 million charitable and a $4 to $5.2 million new market tax credits, we could afford the lowest cost solution. It's very unlikely that it's going to happen. So as you approve the design concept, you have to be aware that you probably have to approve additional funding. I mentioned this to the committee many times. This issue that if this board adds additional money, you endanger the new market tax credits and all the conditions by it, which I think the whole thing is not going to happen. I don't think you're going to get any new market tax credits. And as you approve this communication, you have to be aware you have to subsidize this funding. I recommend, therefore, the design proceed, but that you table the approval of this design concept. There's no need for you to approve the design. There is no specific date set for that. and that you order a charrette. Now, for those of you who know what a charrette is, Kathy Hurst, when she was the community development director, used to hold charrettes. Basically, public meetings and discussions about the design. We did it on the Broad Street Parkway. It was done, I think, about the improvements around the Broad Street Parkway. Years ago, it used to be quite common, at least with Kathy Hirsch, it used to be. I recommend that you set up a meeting, a direct meeting be set up by the committee, chaired by the committee, people be invited, advertise in the Telegraph, and all participate. After all, this project only had a 1.5% approval out of 10,000 votes. And the non-binding referendum passed by 1.5% out of 10,000 votes. And also, I recommend, because it hasn't been done, no arm waving, no hand waving, that you get the construction manager that you pay good money to, Harvey Construction, a competent outfit, appear before this board a half hour before you meet and have them present a summary of their costs, exactly how this $23 million that I just mentioned breaks down, and whether there could be alternatives. Thank you.
Communications requiring final approval.
Communications been received from Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director, regarding design of Performing Arts Center.
Alderwoman Malizia Goya.
Yes, I would move to accept, place on file, and approve the design concept plans for the Performing Arts Center.
You've heard the motion, discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Petitions.
The petition for street acceptance for a portion of Pilgrim Circle has been received.
There being no objection, I will accept the petition as read, refer it to the Committee on Infrastructure, and schedule a public hearing on Pilgrim Circle for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. Nominations, appointments, and elections.
Joint convention with Library Board of Trustees.
There being no objection, I declare that the Board of Aldermen meet in joint convention with the Board of Library Trustees for the purpose of electing a trustee and call for a nomination. We have a nomination.
Linda LaFlamme, I'm the president of the Library Board of Trustees, and I would like to officially nominate on behalf of the board, Kristen Kane.
There being no objection, I will close the nominations. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
I vote for Christian Kane.
Alderman Gidge.
I vote for Christian King.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Vote for Christian Kane.
Alderman Dowd.
Vote for Christian King.
Alderman Clay.
I vote for Christian King.
Alderman Laws.
I vote for Kristen King.
Alderman Lopez.
I vote for Kristen King.
Alderman Karen.
Kristen King.
Alderman Jettie.
Christian Kane.
Alderwoman Malizia Goya.
Kristen Kane.
Alderman Tenza.
Kristen King.
Alderman Schmidt.
Kristen Kane.
Alderman Clemmons.
Kristen King.
Alderman Wilshire.
Kristen Kane.
Trustee Bergeron. Trustee Espistia. Trustee Jaquith. Trustee Cunaparetti. Trustee LaFlamme. Trustee Pinsino. Mayor Donches.
Kristen Kane.
We have 18 for Kristen Kane.
And that motion carries. I will declare Kristen Kane duly appointed to the Library Board of Trustees for a term to expire March 31st, 2026. Is Kristen here this evening to take the oath of office? Please come forward.
Hello.
Come on, come forward.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Nashua Library Board of Trustees, according to the best of your ability, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God? Thank you.
There being no objection, I will declare that the joint convention now arise. Appointments by the mayor.
To the Honorable Board of Aldermen, I have this day appointed David Fredette, 229 Main Street, Nashua, to the office of Conway Ice Rink Commission for a term to expire December 31st, 2023. I have this day appointed Patricia Casey, 15 Pine Hill Avenue, Nashua, to the office of Citizens Advisory Commission for a term to expire October 1st, 2022. I have this day appointed Jason Teleski, 5 Shakespeare Road, Nashua, to the Citizens Advisory Commission for a term to expire October 1st, 2022. And I have this day appointed Beth Quam Tawajum of 14 Ellis Drive, Nashua, to the Citizens Advisory Commission for a term to expire October 1st, 2021. And I have this day appointed to the Tax Increment Financing Advisory Board Michael Sorrento of 4 Water Street, Nashua, Tim Cummings of 229 Main Street, Nashua, Eric Durant of 52 Main Street, Nashua, David Fredette of 229 Main Street, Nashua, Chris Lewis of 670 North Commercial Street, Manchester, New Hampshire, Sarah Machant of 229 Main Street, Nashua, Tia Phillips of 2 Clock Tower Place, Nashua, and Arthur Spilios of 15 Technology Way, Nashua, and respectfully request that these appointments be confirmed.
There being no objection, I'll accept the appointments by the mayor as read and refer them to the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee. Reports of committees. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the September 16, 2019 Budget Review Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the September 18th, 2019 Finance Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the September 9th, 2019 Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the September 17th, 2019 Planning and Economic Development Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the September 12th, 2019 Substandard Living Conditions Special Committee accepted and placed on file. Confirmation of mayor's appointments.
Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee.
There being no objection, I will confirm the appointments of June Lemon, 18 Manchester Street, Nashua, and Amber Logue of 20 Lock Street, Nashua, to the Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee with terms to expire September 10th, 2022. Would you, Amber and June please come forward and take the oath of office?
Would you each raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all of the duties incumbent upon you as members of the Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee, according to the best of your abilities, agreeable to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God?
Conservation Commission. There being no objection, I will confirm the appointment of Gloria McCarthy, 65 Musket Drive, Nashua, to the Conservation Commission for a term to expire December 31st, 2021. Gloria, would you come forward, please, for the oath of office?
Happy birthday. Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Conservation Commission of the City of Nashua, according to the best of your abilities, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God?
Business and Industrial Development Authority. There being no objection, I'll confirm the reappointment of the following individuals to the Business and Industrial Development Authority. Lydia Foley of 2 Bruce Street, Nashua. John Tully, P.O. Box 600, Nashua. Bradley Veer, 456 West Hollis Street, Nashua, for terms to expire September 13th, 2020. Jason Haviland of 29 Todd Road, Nashua, and Deb Novotny of 65 McKenna Drive, Nashua, for terms to expire September 30th, 2021. Kim Reagan of 30 Temple Street, Nashua, for a term to expire September 1st, 2022. H. John Stabile, 48 Lutheran Drive, Nashua, and Carl Andrade of 12 Mountain Laurels Drive, Nashua, for terms to expire September 13th, 2022. If those individuals are present, could you please come forward for the oath of office?
Raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as member of the Business and Industrial Development Authority of the City of Nashua, according to the best of your abilities and agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God? I do.
Nice to meet you.
Cultural Connections Committee. There being no objection, I'll confirm the appointments of the following individuals to the Cultural Connections Committee. Eric Druert of 52 Main Street, Nashua, for a term to expire December 31st, 2020. And Nanyem Egbono of Interfaith Council for a term to expire July 9th, 2022. Are either of those individuals here this evening? They are not. They will be sworn in at a later date. Downtown Improvement Committee. There being no objection, I'll confirm the appointment of Edward Hayes, Terra Salon, 137 Main Street, Nashua, to the Downtown Improvements Committee for a term to expire December 13th, 2019. Is Edward here this evening? He will be sworn in at a later date. Historic District Commission. There being no objection, I will confirm the reappointment of the following individuals to the Historic District Commission. Ed Weber, 4 Cabernet Court, Nashua, for a term to expire March 31st, 2021. And Robert Sampson, 18 Sergeant Ave, Nashua, for a term to expire September 30th, 2022. Is Ed and Robert here this evening? No, they will be sworn in at a later date. Mine Falls Park Advisory Committee. There being no objection, I will confirm the reappointment of Jeff Hannigan, 32 Hood Street, Nashua, and Paula Lockhead of 4 Westbrook Drive, Nashua, for terms to expire August 31st, 2022. And the appointment of Douglas Gagney of 1 Dunbarton Drive, Nashua, for a term to expire September 1st, 2022, to the Mine Falls Park Advisory Committee. Are those individuals here this evening? You will be sworn in at a later date. National Arts Commission. There being no objection, I'll confirm the reappointment of John Egan, 7 Beverly Drive, Nashua, to the National Arts Commission for a term to expire September 1st, 2022. Is John here this evening? John will be sworn in at a later date. Unfinished business resolutions.
Second reading of Resolution R-18-102, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the Nashua Board of Police Commissioners and UFPO Local 645, professional employees of the Nashua Police Department from July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2022, and authorizing related transfers.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to amend R-18-102 in its entirety by replacing it with the proposed amendments made in the Budget Review Committee.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Alderwoman Melissa Goya.
For the public, could Alderman O'Brien please review the amendments?
I'm going to refer to the Budget Committee Chairman, Richard Dow.
This, I don't have the specifics, but this contract came in, as you can see, by the R-18 last year. It was brought back because what was sent to us originally had some issues. It went back and was renegotiated, and what we have before us is the changes from that negotiation. Again, I don't have the specifics in front of me, but it was in negotiations for quite a while, and it was discussed fully at budget. I think it got a unanimous approval at budget, if I'm not mistaken. And I do concur with the mayor's concerns that we could not give this type of benefit to all of the unions or all of the bargaining units because it would be cost prohibitive. But we need to not get caught in the trap of one bargaining unit using other bargaining units to negotiate their contract. We have to take each contract individually and see, what's fair for the bargaining unit, fair for the city, and work on it that way. This was a long negotiation that ended up in this particular revision, and the police department presented a very strong case for approving this. It's a small number of individuals, and so this particular contract is not cost prohibitive to the city if it resulted in its worst-case analysis. Other contracts that come with larger bargaining units, we have to be very careful what we approve. So we need to address each and every one of them individually and do what's fair for the individuals and fair for the city.
The motion is to amend in its entirety by replacing it with the proposed amendments from the Budget Committee. Further discussion on that motion? Alderman Lopez.
I just want to echo Alderman Dowd's comments because he articulated exactly what I'm struggling with, where I understand the mayor's point. I particularly advocated particularly strongly for the last concession, I guess, and that was more because it was recognizing a prior agreement that had been changed without those employees' understandings. I am very strongly inclined to support his suggestion that we not go down this road because it could have potential consequences. But I'm also conscious of the point that Alderman Dowd is making and the points that were made at the Budget Committee, that this is a specific situation that we can't just apply a blanket rule for. And sooner or later, we are going to have to draw the line. I just am not sure this is the point yet. So I'll support it, even though I am kind of reluctant, specifically because of that point. I also want to point out that it was brought up by the chief that there hadn't been clear direction that this was no man's land when they were negotiating. And they did it in order to address other concessions. So I understand their logic and their reasoning and the situation they were in.
Alderman Tenza.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't know if, I know we're just discussing the amendment now, so I'm not sure if this is the correct time to address concerns with the contract or to wait until after we're actually discussing the amendment. I'll leave.
Yeah, it's okay, right?
Should discuss the amendment now.
Okay, we should discuss the amendment.
Okay. I'll reserve my comments then until we discuss the actual contract. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, the motion is to amend R-18-102 by replacing it with the proposed amendments made in the Budget Committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make the motion for final passage of R-18-102 as amended.
Alderman Tenza.
Thank you. And so, just to clarify, at the Budget Committee, there was one person who didn't support it for a lot of reasons that the mayor outlined before. We're talking about the sick time, which is the sticking point for this. And so I think roughly 16 employees of this bargaining group will be able to cash out 35% of their sick time, not to exceed 720 hours when they retire, based on when they were hired after 2003. And so my concern with this, and I understand the chairman in the comments that have been made, but my concern with this is that we're setting up a two-tiered system where smaller bargaining units, because it's not the expense to the city is not as great as the larger bargaining units. We're setting up two tiers where the smaller bargaining units are going to get this benefit, where the bigger bargaining units we're going to have to say, sorry, it's too much to give you the increase to 720 hours or 35% or anything like that. And I appreciate what the police commission and the chief is trying to do for for the employees in trying to equalize them with other people and trying to give them this benefit, which, it's not a comment on whether they deserve it or not. Someone who works for a couple decades for the city is able to accumulate up to 60 days in 60 days in vacation time, as well as up to 720 hours of sick time to be paid out when they retire. That's a significant benefit. We all got in our mailboxes today the printout, the sheet from the city about retirements. And obviously the chief's retirement is a little different since he's the department head. There's also someone, deputy city clerk on there with a significant amount that the city had to pay as a benefit that's been bargained for that employee as well. So all of these things do add up. I'm not against compensating the folks fairly who are in this bargaining unit, but I think we're getting into a slippery slope on this, going down this path, trying to approve or disapprove contracts because of this. I think we have to take a stand here and say across the board, it is what it has been, and hope that other members of the board will agree with me.
Alderman Karen.
Thank you. I too have struggled with this, but the group that we talked about, the small 11 people that we were able to give them back their sick leave, they were hired prior to 2001 when the change was made for the city, and we felt that it was fair that they should be grandfathered like everyone else that was working. This is a contract with a union, and even though Alderman Dowd says we have to look at each contract differently, unfortunately, that's when unions put their feet together because if one group gets it, the rest want it. And if these 15 people were hired under the new system, which was 20% of their sick pay, then I think we need to stick with that. The people who suffer the most from some of this changes are those who are not unionized. And those are the people who suffer the most. So I, for one, I appreciate all of the employees that work for the city, but if you're hired under a particular benefit, then I don't think it's fair to change it and anticipate that this small group is the only one that's going to be looking for that in the future. And that's what we really have to think about for future budgets, future employees. So with that, I am not going to support this particular contract at this time. Thank you.
Alderman O'Brien.
I'd like to thank Alderman Karen for her comments. I am going to support this, but there are many different contracts out there, and even within the contract of people that you say as a group, there's differences. In the case that I can speak of firsthand, within the fire department, you have the unionized members, but then you have the deputy chiefs and the assistant chiefs and the chiefs of the department that are in the merit system. So what happens, labor gets a raise by their contractual work, but the merit system does not give out an equal par raise. So what ends up happening, there is compression that a captain on the fire department will almost make, and it has happened. And if he works a little bit of shift coverage, more money than the deputy fire chief that has tested and went to school and college to obtain that type of credentials. In my utopic world, the city should not have any dealings with unions. Unions should not exist, but they exist for a particular reason because somehow, some way, somebody gets feeling that they're not being treated fairly. Maybe we need to take a general overview as my final comment on it to look at all contracts and come up with some form of matrix system that basically to say the baseline and have them on a matrix scale of what we expect. And then you could put a different type of things in it based upon what their need is. such as you could probably designate hazardous duty pay, such as officers, police officers, and firefighters, as compared to somebody, and not to say that their job is not hazardous, but that works for DPW or something like that. It needs to be addressed too. When you come up to our unions and they all come in at different times, there's only so much in the kettle, and it's almost like who's the first one at the door on Halloween, who's got to get the most candy. It's a pretty unfair system, and maybe we ought to take a step back as we look at this and maybe say, maybe we could do a better job. So that's what I'm taking from this, but I will support this. Thank you.
Alderman Clee.
I have a question, and may I ask Alderman Dodd? I don't know if you'll know this, but we're talking about the 15 or 16 people that are getting this currently. If they were to leave and a new hire comes in, would they fall under the 720 or would they revert to the 20%?
Attorney
Per
Bolton.
to the Corporation Council.
It depends whether this passes tonight.
If this were to pass.
The contract that is currently being followed, right? The previous contract provides for 20%. If this resolution to approve the cost items of this newly negotiated contract passes, that will become the new contract for everyone, whether they're employed now, whether they start tomorrow, whether they start next week, and that will continue until a successor agreement to this agreement comes into effect, and then it's whatever's in that collective bargaining agreement. So in theory, it could go from 35 up to 50. It could go from 35 back down to 20. But it's whatever contract is in effect at the time people retire is what you go by. And in some contracts, there are grandfathering provisions, and if you're hired, you know, before a certain date, you're under one program, and after a certain date, you're under another program. But the way this contract reads that you're looking at tonight, 35% no matter when you're hired. The way the previous contract read, 20%.
Alderman Clee.
So just, not that I need an answer to this question, but just a comment. If they were to grow exponential, or in other words, if they had more staff or anything else like that, all of these people would fall into this 35% or 720 hours or something to that nature. So we have the potential of this becoming bigger. Not that it would, but there's always that potential. So I have a little anxiety about it, so thank you.
Alderman Dowd.
Two things. One, this group is the civilian supervisors. They're the senior civilians in the police department. And I don't foresee them growing, especially not exponentially. The other thing that was brought out by the police commissioners and the chief when he was here was that they did not get a lot of guidance from the city, which I'll speak to in a second, relative to what might or might not be acceptable. Now, we can't dictate or set policy as what we're going to allow and not allow for union negotiations. But we can certainly say that these are the things that will be looked at very strongly. And I don't care whether it's this particular line item or some other line item that causes an extreme expense to the city because of that bargaining unit. When we negotiate a contract and we pass a contract here, we have to be concerned about the overall cost to the city, the fairness to the employees, and the fairness to the city. In this particular group, they were negotiating for months and months on end, and negotiations are a give and take if you've ever been part of a negotiating team. And they did not have an expectation when they came back to us with this revision that the city was going to say no. To me, someone in the city needs to be sort of guidance to the negotiating groups so that they have some idea what may or may not be accepted. And I think that we have to address our cost concerns on a one-for-one basis, which is the only thing we can discuss as part of a contract here at the Board of Aldermen. We can only discuss cost line items. So in this instance where, you know, after all the negotiations over all that period of time with their commissioners, at least one of which was a former alderman, and the bargaining group and the police, I fully appreciate the mayor's position on this with larger bargaining units, that it would not be good. And just because we allow it for this contract does not mean that we need to allow it for every other contract. If it's cost prohibitive, the whole contract is cost prohibitive, and we would decline the contract based on cost.
Further discussion. Alderman Lopez.
I hate to regret to say it, but to Alderman Dowd's point, I think the mayor articulated his opposition to this pretty clearly when we did it last time, to the point where he tried to veto it. And I can't, in my mind, pass this off to someone else. If the only way we can indicate what our preferences are is with our votes here right now, in terms of like things that need to be bargained with and things that should not be attempted. I personally feel like I guess we do have to draw the line here, as Alderman Karen has pointed out, and as Alderman Tenza has said, because otherwise we're not providing the guidance that perpetuated this in the first place.
Alderman Jettie.
So I've been away for about a month, and so I'm trying to get back to on board. Everybody's talking so fast, it's hard for me to understand. But I remember when we talked about this regarding the non-affiliated employees, and there was a concern expressed about the idea that people could, I mean, I understand and support the concept of people accumulating sick leave, and if they get sick, being able to use that sick leave. What I objected to with the non-affiliated employees was their ability to cash in that sick leave. So they're not, so if they're fortunate enough not to get sick, you know, they can, the idea of using this accumulated sick leave as a cash out is a concept that I'm not comfortable with. I think that if people are sick, you know, we ought to, I mean, the whole purpose of sick leave, in my opinion, is that if somebody gets sick, their family should not suffer because of you know, their lack of income while they're sick. So we support them. We provide a steady income to them so that their families, they and their families, don't suffer during that sick time. But if they're fortunate enough not to get sick, I'm not comfortable with giving them a payout, a cash out, when if they leave, if they resign or retire. As I'm looking at the summary of this thing, under Article 17, it says that employees hired prior to September 16th, 2003 can accrue up to a maximum of 1,080 hours of sick leave, and that's the equivalent of 135 days. But they're after they have served on death, retirement, or resignation after 15 years of service, they get 100% of that sick leave accrued balance to a maximum of 720 hours or 90 days. And but employees hired after September 16th, 2003 can accrue unlimited hours. And again, they're limited upon death, retirement, or resignation after 15 years, they're limited to 35% of the accrued balance instead of the 100% they had, but still to a maximum of 720 hours. So I'm not exactly sure what the change is. But I don't know if Alderman O'Brien has an answer.
Alderman O'Brien.
Well, first I would like to say the sick leave and everything, you got to be very careful when you bring that subject up, because if you take with the people that this particular contract work with, if an officer calls in sick, then the city goes down in its manning. And it is determined when the city goes down in manning that the street safety isn't there for the other officers. So the chief of police or the chief of the fire department may determine, as what I can speak wholly for the fire department, that they hire back on shift coverage. And with the fire department, it's at straight time. It's not really at the time and a half, 100%. So therefore, that keeps the minimum manning at a level of safety that the public demand. Now, in order to have that public safety and to have that, you need to allow something in between, and that's why you have that collection of unused sick time. The city, by doing that, actually does save a dollar amount if they're not taking their sick time, they're not paying sick time, and they're not paying for somebody to come back and replace them. So there is an economic savings, and you gotta, I'm just saying it to make aware of that, and that's why that policy does exist. It has proven itself to work. Thank you.
Alderman Bolton, did you, Attorney Bolton.
Alderman O'Brien, I don't think any of these positions, when the person's out sick, someone is called
Well, I
into-
didn't say so, Counselor. I says they're working with people that are in that, and that's why they're asking for it, I assume. Am I correct?
I don't think that issue presents itself with these employees.
No, I agree. I agree.
Okay.
Anyone else?
But excuse me, just for, I thought Councilor Jettie made an overview of why he did not like the sick leave accumulation. And maybe I misunderstood Alderman Jettie's question, and I was answering directly, but I appreciate your diligence to give me an answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The motion is for final passage of R-18-102 as amended.
Before,
Alderman Jettie.
so I don't think Alderman O'Brien answered my question, and I don't know if Alderman Dowd can answer it. I can answer.
The mayor can answer your question, Alderman Jettie.
Okay.
So for the employees hired before 2003, September 1, I believe is the date, it's as you described initially. It's a maximum of 720 hours. Then in 2003, a change was negotiated in the contract for employees hired after that date. And the current contract provides that employees hired after 2003, September 1, 2003, would be able to accumulate only 20%. And so the people that this change would affect are those hired after September 1, 2003, all of whom have entered the system with the understanding they'd get 20%. The city gave some kind of concession to buy that change for the new employees. So that now that system has been in effect for 16 years. And some of these people have 16 years under the system. The next part you read is the proposed change from the current contract. Current contract says maximum 20%. The new language which you read would allow 35% or 720 hours maximum. So the increase, so that the amount of payout is being increased from 20% to 35, which is about, under the maximum accrual, the difference between paying out for 20% of annual salary up to about a third or 35%. So does that explain?
Alderman Jettie.
And what about their ability to accrue an unlimited hours? Is that currently the case, or is this new?
They can incur unlimited hours, but they can only cash out for 20%. And as a realistic, realistic scenario is it's very difficult to accumulate more than a year's worth of sick time. So as a practical matter, the maximum currently you're going to get paid out is 20% of your pay. Because maybe you can accumulate 2,200 hours, or about a year's pay. As proposed in this contract, now that would go to a third of a year, basically, because now it's 35% of 21 or 2,200 hours, up to a maximum of 720.
Okay, thank you.
All set? Okay, the motion before us is for final passage of R-18-102 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Could we have a division, please?
Division.
Those in favor? 6, 7. That means motion fails 7-7. Okay. Resolution 19-174. I'm sorry. Oh, it's still on the floor, okay.
Someone may want to amend it, someone may.
Alderman Clemmons.
I move to table.
Motion is to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Second reading resolution R-19-174, establishing the use of fund balance for tax rate.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R-19-175.
Four.
Okay, when I get to 175, that's why I wondered. But now make a motion for final passage of R-19-174.
By roll call?
By roll call, I don't.
Thank you. Okay, the motion is for final passage of Resolution 19-174. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Gidge.
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderwoman Malizi Goya.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes,
We have 14 yeas, 0 nays.
and that motion carries.
Second reading of R-19-175, relative to the transfer of $10,000 from Department 194 contingency, account 70100, general contingency, to Department 181 community development, accounting classification 55 other services, for a landscaping design plan for Edgewood Cemetery.
Alderman Dowd.
Now, a motion for final passage of R-19-175.
A little ahead of yourself tonight? Motion,
Ooh.
the motion is for final passage of Resolution 19-175. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Dowd.
If there's anyone that would like more amplification of the reasoning for this, I'd be willing to provide it. This is, if you're aware or not aware of the tree cutting at the Edgewood Cemetery, that was a sudden shock to the neighbors. And I'll keep this very brief. They were very concerned that all of a sudden they looked out their windows and it looked like Lebanon after a bombing. We are working with the mayor, we're working to set this money aside so we can use our landscape architect to do a design that will be applicable and usable by the cemetery and pleasing to the neighbors so they can have some input.
Motion is for final passage of Resolution 19-175. Alderman Lopez.
Question to the chair, to Alderman Dowd. This is the neighbors that were complaining, not the residents?
They've been silent on the motion.
The motion before us is final passage of Resolution 19-175. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries.
Second reading of Resolution 19-176, relative to the transfer of $56,300 from Department 194 contingency, account 70100, general contingency.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R 19-176.
Motion is for final passage of Resolution 19-176. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Unfinished business ordinances.
Ordinance 019-052, amending NRO 93-6, impoundment of dogs, cats, ferrets, and chickens.
Alderman Clee.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of 019-052 as amended, and may I speak to it for a moment?
We'll have to amend first.
Oh, sorry, as amended.
No, the motion to amend in its entirety.
It doesn't say that, but yes, I guess so.
Okay, by replacing it with the proposed amendments made in the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee. Is that your motion, Alderman Clay?
Yes, it is.
Okay. The motion is to amend ordinance 19052 by replacing it with the proposed amendments made in the Personnel Affairs and Administrative Affairs Committee. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Dowd.
Clarification on the amendments just for the general public.
Alderman Clay.
Yes, we replaced the term dog officer with the animal control officer, which is what his actual title is.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Alderman Clay.
Yes, now I'd like to make the motion for final passage of 019-052 as amended, and may I speak to it?
You may.
Okay. Hopefully this will put an end to the controversy of a bill that does nothing but clarify the existing law. And while I've gotten many calls in favor of it, because people are saying, put the cats on leashes, I've gotten quite a few of negative, and I won't go into those. I've belabored that too long. But I just want the clarification of this. And for those who said that there's no way of identifying a cat that gets picked up, isn't listening, you can chip your cat, just like you can chip your dog or any other animal. So you can put an identification. Someone even said to me that they do tattooing. Well, I have 2 greyhounds that have been tattooed. I don't recommend it, but chipping is harmless. It goes between the shoulder blades, and it would be easier. This weekend, there was a letter to the editor that stated that we should license cats, and that way we can identify them. I do want to kind of address that really quickly. License of cats would be quite expensive to the city, as well as the additional hiring of people, new software, etc. And if we're only doing this just to identify cats, again, I run to get your cat chipped. I think I've said enough through the weeks as this has gone on, and thank you.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, I think there's been much to do about nothing relative to this. And I think the way that some of the members of the public have treated Alderman Clee is absolutely wrong. And this basically, I've had some calls myself on this, and once you explain it to people, they have no problem with it. It's the same as it's been. We're not putting cats on leashes, and we are not, registering cats or anything like that. If a cat was causing an issue, it was sick, maybe the animal control officer might go out to satisfy a complaint. But I can tell you, and having talked to the police, they are not going to be chasing cats around if they see them loose just to pick them up. They have a little better things to do than that. So, and I think the people that are making a big to-do about this aren't really seeing what's trying to be done. And the other thing is, I think there are other parts of NRO 93.6 that may have reference to the dog officer rather than the animal control officer. If that's still the case, I'd make an amendment that we change all references to the dog officer to the animal control officer.
We just did that.
No, we just didn't.
So, no, we didn't.
In the hole.
Further discussion? Alderman Lopez.
I'd also like to observe that while the mayor and Alderman Clee were identified on the postcard, also there's been a lot of discussion about the animal control officer who, to my knowledge, is not a homicidal maniac. He's not trying to collect animals and like do away with them. They go to the Humane Society. The Humane Society has a very long tradition of helping reunite pets with their owners. There's a missing cat on Ledge Street right now, and that family is looking everywhere for it. For more information, consult Nashua Cats Who Have People. It's a Facebook group. But if you see a stray cat or a missing cat, or a stray cat or a seemingly like non-owned one, it should be everybody's responsibility to at least worry about it because somebody may be looking for it. If it's a clearly owned cat, it's domesticated, it's fairly well taken care of, looking confused, then this helps because people who are running themselves crazy looking for a cat, at least they know where to start. So I just wanted to express my support for the process that this is trying to support. I think it's responsible for us to do it as an alderman, or as alderman and as a city.
Further discussion. Alderman Jettie.
So, I too do not approve of the abuse that has been heaped on to Alderman Clee and the dog officer and other people concerned. I think it's totally out of totally inappropriate. So I had several concerns, and I talked to Alderman Clee about perhaps sending this back to committee, and she reacted rather negatively to that suggestion, and Attorney Bolton said that we could make these amendments here tonight. So the first issue I had was even though we just we amended it to reflect the name of the dog officer as animal control officer in paragraph A, as Alderman Dowd has suggested. The term dog officer appears also in sections B, C, D, E, F, G of 93-6. It also appears in 93-7 and 93-9. And I thought that he would made a motion to amend to make those, to change the term dog officer to animal control officer wherever it appears in this section. So if I'm in favor of that, but I have a couple of other issues that I'd like to speak about after we vote on that.
So I will formally make the motion to amend to change all references to the dog officer in NRO 93.6 to animal control officer. What?
Okay, so the motion is to change dog officer to animal control officer.
Is that what I said? Yes.
Yes. Throughout section, chapter 93.
All right.
Discussion, further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries. Alderman Jettie.
The other issue I had is probably more difficult to deal with, but under 93 dash 6A, with all due respect, this is changing the current law. Our current ordinance does not provide, does not authorize the animal control officer to seize or pick up cats. The only the fact that that appears in the title, there, our ordinances specifically say that the titles to those paragraphs, those are made largely by the company that produces the book, and the online version. And in our ordinances, it specifically says that those titles are not part of the law. They are for convenience only. There is state law that provides for, that authorizes the seizure of cats who have bitten somebody, who are displaying the symptoms of rabies. But stray cats, no, it doesn't talk about that. So I think the clarification that Alderman Clee is trying to make here is a good one. And I support this amendment to the ordinance. However, I've heard it said during the discussions that the animal control officer is not going to be going around picking up stray cats. That if there's a complaint, if a cat is a nuisance or is injured or is displaying symptoms of illness, yes, the animal control officer will react to a complaint. But he's not going to be going around looking for stray cats. So I would like to suggest that if what we're really concerned about are cats that are being a nuisance, they're off the property, they're bothering a neighbor, they're causing some kind of a problem, and under Section 6 of the amendment, any cat or ferret which is off the premises of the owner and either is a nuisance or is suspected of being, or which is diseased or injured, I think that's what we're trying to do here, and I think that's fine. Section 7 goes on to say that any cat or ferret which the animal control officer or other authorized person has reason to believe is a stray. So, that part I don't think is necessary. I think it's a lot different than what the current law is. The current law does not restrict cats. If they're causing a problem, certainly. But if they are just off the property, people have called me and said, their cats go out and they've never restricted them to the property. They don't know how they would be able to do that unless they kept them inside. We have a cat. He's inside all the time. We never let him out. And so, I'm wondering whether or not we would be better off by striking paragraph 7 or subparagraph 7. And I would like to propose that as a further amendment to the ordinance to strike subparagraph 7. So the remaining 6 subparagraphs would remain.
Point of order.
Alderman Dowd.
Corporation Counsel, can you amend the motion 3 times?
Can I speak?
You've already voted on the prior amendments. Yeah, there's no
Okay. All right.
prohibition on the motion being
Just
proposed.
check.
Alderman Schmidt, did you want to weigh in on that?
Thank you. Yes, I definitely do. I don't think stray cats means your cat got out and somebody's going to grab it. I know that's not what it means. The Animal Welfare League defines stray cats as cats who have at some stage been domestic, but for some reason have had to fend for themselves, whether they have become lost or been abandoned. These cats can often be rehabilitated if they are taken into care. Stray cats means cats that are like on my back deck for a week that have been looking for something. Cats that have summered over because somebody dropped them in our cul-de-sac and it's wintertime. That's when you call the animal control officer and you say, this cat needs help. I don't think that anybody would assume that stray just means that somebody opened the door and the cat got out. So I'd really like to leave stray cats in as a part of this NRO.
Okay, well, the motion, did you phrase that in the form of a motion to strike paragraph 7,
Yeah,
subparagraph 7?
that's my motion, and if I could respond,
Sure, Alderman Jody.
thank you for that definition, but that definition is not in the ordinance, and the dictionary definition of stray isn't as well defined as what you've proposed, so.
Animal Control League.
Well, the Animal Control League is not part of our ordinance. If, maybe we would add that definition, if that's.
Okay. I'm going to go to Alderman Clemmons and then Alderman O'Brien and Alderman Gathright. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. I don't understand what we're arguing over. To be honest with you, I'm at a loss because we have an animal control officer, and his job or her job is to go out and control animals that are uncontrollable, right? So if there's a cat that's in my yard and I don't want it there, I should be able to call the animal control officer to have the cat removed. Same thing that I would do with a dog or any other animal for that matter. So whether or not it's defined as a stray, as far as I'm concerned, if there's a cat on my property and I don't want it there, it's not mine, and I don't know whose it is, then it's a stray. Now, the onus is on the owner of the cat. Get your cat chipped, because what'll happen is the cat will go to the Humane Society, and when they read the chip, they will call you, and they will say, we have your cat. It was found on Alderman Clemmons' property, and it was really annoying him, and he called the animal control officer. So I don't know what we're arguing about here, and I won't support taking that out.
Alderman O'Brien.
I am too a little confused, and I do question when you strike out a whole complete section. I think we're getting a little bit more, in depth here, as changing a name from, dog officer to animal control. So, through the chair, can we ask a question to the committee chairman? Does the committee chairman see merit to bring this back to the committee for such a large striking of a particular section?
Does the chair wish to respond?
Okay. So I think we've kind of mulled this over, not once, but twice. And to Alderman Clee's credit, she suggested some of these amendments because if you look, I think, on the van, it does say animal control officer. It doesn't say dog officer. And people have been picking up stray cats for a long time. I had someone tell me that they put up a hot trap in their yard, and they catch 3 or 4 of them, and if they don't know who the owner is, they bring it to the Humane Society. So to eliminate that, I don't think that's right. I think that if someone wanted a major change like that, I think they should have been, and no offense, if you were on vacation, but they should have been at the personnel meeting, because we really talked about this in length there the last 2 times. So, no, I don't think it should be sent back to committee.
Alderman Gathright.
I just have a question, in number 7, who is the authorized person? Is that the resident, the owner, wherever the cat is that?
Alderman Clee?
To be very honest with you, I'm not really sure who the other authorized person is, but I would assume that it is. And seeing I have the mic, may I just say something? Alderman Karen brought up the point of the have a heart. And the truth is that when a cat or an animal of the size of a cat goes into have a heart, and you try to pick that up, and you try to bring that to the Humane Society, it's quite heavy, and sometimes the cat is a little unruly. So the truth is, in a situation, they may call animal control and ask them if they could transport it from one place to another. And this authorizes the animal control officer to do it in a humane and legal way. And I think it should remain there. I don't think that we should strike it. I think this as is the way it should go. And I appreciate it being left as is. Thank you.
Alderman Karen.
To Alderman Gathridge's question, I think that if the animal control officer isn't available, they'd probably send a police officer there, because the animal control officer isn't on duty 24/7. So I think that's what that means.
That's correct. Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, I would just like to, with all due respect, suggest that if the cat is on Alderman Clemens's property and he doesn't want it there, then it meets the definition of nuisance under Section 6, not 7. I mean, every time people talk about stray cats, I watched the meeting. I looked at the minutes. I've heard it said numerous times. It represented that the animal control officer himself has said he's not going to go around picking up stray cats. So if he's not going to do it, if that's not what we're intending, why put it in? If we're only talking about cats that are, a nuisance, sick or injured, then why don't we just leave it at that? Why say something that we apparently acknowledge is not going to happen? Every time, I've heard it said several times to other people who have raised this issue, this is not going to happen. They're not going to go up, they're not going to be picking up stray cats. They're only going to be picking up cats that are causing a problem. So why don't we just say that?
Alderman Dowd and then Alderman Clemens.
In deference to everything that's been said and to Alderman Clee, I move the question.
The motion is to move the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Wait a minute.
Opposed?
I'm confused about this. So an aye means that we strike number 7?
No.
correct?
No.
Okay.
It's to move the question.
Okay.
Vote on.
Then I say aye.
Ends discussion.
The motion to move the question passes. The motion on the floor right now is to delete or strike subsection 7.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Made a
Yes.
motion.
Alderman Jettie
Oh,
made the
I'm
motion.
sorry. Okay.
Further discussion on that motion?
No, we just moved the question. We have to vote on
More
it.
discussion.
No more discussion. Okay.
We're all confused.
Okay. Then the motion is for final passage as, no.
Do this amendment.
To
then we
strike
can-
number 7, there's no discussion. Okay. All those in favor of striking section 7 signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay. Motion fails. Now we're back to the motion for final passage of ordinance 1952 as amended. Alderman Clemmons.
I don't want to belabor the subject, but I do think that having that subsection in there is good. I'm glad we just made that decision, and the reason I say that is because if there was an issue with stray cats, particularly if they had rabies or if they had some other kind of disease, and they were in a neighborhood, and it had been identified that it was a problem, then I would hope that the animal control officer would go after those particular stray cats because they would have an identified disease, or at least we would think that they did. And so, again, not to belabor the point, but there's a reason that that section was there.
Alderman Dowd.
For the same point I made a minute ago, I move the question.
Motion is to move the question. All those in favor of moving the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion before us is for final passage of ordinance 1952 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries.
Second reading of ordinance 19053, authorizing signatures for contracts less than $1,000.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of 019-053.
Motion before us is final passage of ordinance 19053. Discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. New business resolutions.
First reading of R 19177, relative to the acceptance and appropriation of $26,500 as a donation from A.W. Rose LLC to be used for the installation of a multipurpose sport court at the Arlington Street Community Center.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gathright, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clay, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Karen, Alderwoman Malisi Goya, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, Alderman Clemmons, and myself. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Budget Review Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19178, authorizing the sale of city land located at 141 to 143 Burke Street, map 11, lot 158, to Loyal Holdings LLC for $3,900,000.
Can I make a comment really quickly? There was an article in the Telegraph today that claimed that this sale was for the entire property. So I just want to make it clear that it's not for the entire property, it's for a portion of it.
Thank you. Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Lopez, Alderwoman Malisi Goya, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, and Alderman Clemmons. Given its first reading, I'll assign it to the Committee on Infrastructure and the Nashua City Planning Board.
First reading of Resolution 19179, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the Nashua Board of Education and the Nashua School Custodian Union, Local 365, Council 93, ASCME, AFL-CIO, from July 1st of 2016 through June 30th, 2021, and related transfers.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Gathright, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Lopez, Alderwoman Malisi Goya, Alderman Schmidt, and myself. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Budget Review Committee. There being no objection, I will suspend the rules to allow for the first reading of a resolution received after the agenda was prepared.
Resolution R 19180, authorizing the City of Nashua to enter into a lease agreement with 131 Burke Street LLC for 141 Burke Street.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gidge, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Finance Committee. New business ordinances.
First reading of ordinance 19054, removing the 30-minute parking time limit on a portion of the west side of Walnut Street.
Additional sponsors? Alderman Gathright, Alderman Clee, Alderwoman Malisi Goya. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure.
First reading of ordinance 19055, authorizing the police department to donate lost or abandoned bicycles.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gedge, Alderman Gathright, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Karen, Alderwoman Melisi Golia, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, Alderman Clemmons, and myself.
Get that one off the bridge post?
Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee.
First reading of ordinance 19056, updating the Environment and Energy Committee.
All the additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Gedge, Alderman Gathright, Alderman Clee, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Schmidt. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee.
First reading of ordinance 19057, increasing the parking time limit at meters in Zone 1.
Additional sponsors, Alderwoman Gathright, Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderwoman Melisi Golia, and Alderman Schmidt. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure.
Madam President,
Alderman Clemmons.
could you forward that to the Downtown Improvement Committee as well?
I will also assign that to the Downtown Improvements Committee, yes.
Thank you.
You bet.
First reading of ordinance 19058, authorizing stop signs on Dinsmore Street at its intersection with Douglas Street.
Additional sponsors, Alderwoman Gathright, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Gedge. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure. Period for general public comment. Stacy Lawton. Please give your name and address for the record, please.
Stacy Marie Lawton, 80 Elm Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, Ward 4. I come before you tonight raising an issue we talked about earlier this year, and that was we were talking about raising the minimum smoking age to 21. And as we've been seeing lately in the news, people are actually starting to die from these devices and these the nicotine in the vaping products. I'm not specifically talking about combustible cigarettes. I'm talking about the vaping devices. And we've seen a lot of deaths. We've seen a lot of additives being added to them, and they're not a safe product to have in our stores for anybody to consume at any age. We saw it today in Massachusetts. The governor of Massachusetts put a 4-month ban on vaping devices, and the city of Boston in itself as a city is taking action, and that's why I'm here tonight. As a city, we can still bring this issue back up. We can either raise the minimum age, we could potentially ban the sale of vaping devices throughout the city and set an example for the state. Hopefully we can get Governor Sununu to do something similar if he's allowed, or something needs to be done. And these products are very dangerous. I think they're even more dangerous than a combustible cigarette, which is dangerous in itself. Yet that the complications and death that could occur from regular combustible cigarettes will take longer, but we've only seen vaping devices out for a short few years now, and they're causing heart failure, all kinds of other deaths, other types of problem. And I'm a medical cannabis patient, and I'm even questioning if the dispensary should be carrying the cannabis type of vaping products at this time until, we can determine fully if vaping is 100% safe. So even as someone who would be interested in using a cannabis vape product, I don't even think it's safe for even my own consumption. Also, on a separate note, when I was here last and speaking about that, I had mentioned that I had been found eligible to serve in public office. That was confirmed recently by city's legal department. I had filed to run as a selectman in the city. However, my petitions were not verified due to a certain complication. However, my committee that I had spoke about last time, my exploratory committee, has shifted gears. We're now the committee to elect, and I'm running as a write-in candidate for Ward 4 selectman. So And with that, I will end my comments for tonight, and thank you all. And I'd also like to welcome the new city clerk, Susan Levering. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori Orlano?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. Just wanted to address a couple things. The new assessing manual and procedures was released at the Board of Assessors meeting on the 29th of August. And that was of pretty big interest to me and a few other people, based on a lot of the concerns we had and what we were looking for. And I was excited. The newspaper was there. They covered an article. They asked for comments. And, you know, Ms. Kleiner had said that the concerns of the public were addressed. Any concerns brought forth citing the manual addresses many of the concerns brought forth by Ortolano and others. They're all addressing concerns that the public brought to us, so it's not like they haven't had any input, because they have. We listened to those concerns and we constructed the procedures. These are policies on updating a property record card, how you look at grade and condition, what constitutes fair and poor, and that's very important, that we get all our assessors looking at properties the same way. And when she presented the board with the book, she said that they welcomed any questions, and I want to make certain I have the words correct, that she was presenting them with the new procedure manual, and inside you'd find it divided into 2 sections. I took the time, a week after it was released, it was put down in the assessing office to view, and I took the time to go down there. I spent about 2.5 hours down there reviewing the manual, and I typed up a paper on it, on what I thought was missing and what areas I thought might have some weaknesses. But what shocked me is that any of the concerns I raised, and I mean, I know I'm not liked, but there was nothing in there, absolutely nothing, for the concerns that I addressed. I mean, I really think there was nothing. Policy headings, one of the things I had asked about months ago was, well, if you're going to write these policies, the old manual had no headings, no revisions, no dates, no page numbers. If you're doing policies and procedures, you want to have revisions and some way of tracking when they were activated and what their standing is. So this new manual comes out, there's none of that. The condition and the grade issues were not in the book. I started getting very confused. The EYB was not in the book. The other one was the ratings on kitchens and baths. When we had talked back last November, how do we look at fixtures? How do we look at something that's good, average, fair, excellent? What are the qualities of a bathroom and kitchen that would give those ratings? And that's independent of an upgrade for Assess Pro 5. That's just how are the assessors looking at this stuff. That wasn't in there. Documenting abatements and how we would document abatements on property files, that wasn't in there. The percentage increase concern I had, the increase on properties when we'd send a letter home, I did address that I was concerned about using a fixed number because lower income people are hit harder. A $200,000 home is experiencing a 10% increase to have a letter delivered, and a $600,000 home is only experiencing a 3% increase and they get a letter. And for people at lower income, notifying them earlier or based on a percentage might be better financially for them, and EYB and grade. So I was shocked, and I was struggling down there. I was struggling with the manual because I couldn't find these things, and I kept thinking I was missing them. So I went Friday, I went Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning before the Board of Assessors meeting, I went in for 2 minutes. I asked for the manual, and I stood at the counter, and I looked, and I realized pages were missing. We're missing little segments of pages are not in the book, and they're not in the index. The EYB, the grade and the condition, the bathrooms, total rooms, and kitchens, those sections were all missing. And I said to the woman at the counter, I said, all these pages are missing. What? I said, there are no pages, so all the information I've been looking for isn't here. She was shocked, and she looked at me and said, I don't know why. She walked back to an assessor, and she said, all these pages aren't in the book. And the assessor went, I come out tonight, and I hear Miss Kleiner mention you know, EYB and condition and stuff are going to be addressed with Assess Pro 5. I don't understand why the board wasn't told that, and the board was presented with this manual as if it was a complete manual. And I don't have any way as a citizen to go and ask them, where's the stuff? Because for me, it becomes a right to know request. It goes up to legal. It could spend 4 weeks up there. It can get denied because it's not a document request. This one would be, provide me with the documents. As a matter of fact, I wrote 2 right to knows before coming out here. One to the Board of Assessors and one to Kim Kleiner for all of this missing documentation, because I have no way of getting it, and I can't ask a question at the desk because they wouldn't tell me the answer anyway. But it's just disappointing that you do all of this work and you wait so long, and somebody who's in charge of the office goes to the press and says, all of this is in there. We looked at grade and condition and what constitutes fair and poor. It's all in there. And I'm digging around and I can't find any of it. And I feel that's not transparency. That just isn't transparency for me. That's, you know, shutting the public out, making us run through hoops, making me work extra hard to try and figure it out. And I know that she really dislikes the public, because in her thanks at the end, there was no recognition of the work that the public has done to try and help with what's gone on in assessing. And that happened every presentation she has given. She has thanked the city, but never the public. And that just shows a very strong dislike. And I'm not the only one. She mentioned she took input from other people. I don't know if she incorporated theirs, but she's not overly appreciative of any input. On a second note, at the prior meeting on August 13th, Ms. Kleiner got up and spoke about investigations that have been going on. And she mentioned, because I submitted a letter, that there was concern on my part studying what happened in an audit report to $24 million that was reduced from 12 properties. And she said during the 2018 update, it was determined that the base rate for school colleges, what we call Assessing Code 72, was incorrect. Correcting the table for Code 72 resulted in the bulk of a $24 million adjustment that you keep hearing about. This has been verified by KRT. I'm not certain how much you've all heard about the $24 million adjustment. It was what happened, and this was the launching of right to know requests. I requested an audit report, and in that audit report, I discovered that one assessor, 2 days before the MS1 was going out, made a $24 million adjustment to 12 properties. And it was unprecedented. It was strange. I was really concerned because when I tried to look on the property cards to understand what happened, there wasn't full documentation. I did find that a Code 72 change was done on a few of them. All of those properties that were changed are not all tax-paying properties. Some were exempt, but some were tax-paying properties. And they got massive reductions, massive. And when she said this has been verified by KRT, I don't, now first of all, when this happened and was discovered in, I'm trying to think when, May, I wrote a letter to her and I said, have you looked at that audit report you sent me? Are you concerned by these reductions? Do you understand why they're done? Would it be helpful to meet? Could you offer any explanation? I heard nothing. After 2 weeks, I wrote back again. I got a letter from legal saying this didn't meet the requirements of a document, and therefore your concerns wouldn't be addressed. At that point, I went to the Attorney General's office, and several other citizens did, and said, we want to understand what happened with $24 million. And we camped out with our concerns at the AG's office, and they pushed it down to Nashua. And they came to us and said, you got to bring it to your Nashua PD. So the Nashua PD opened an investigation into this $24 million. And when you hear that there's no investigation going on, there is no further investigation of the $24 million you keep hearing about, to my knowledge, there is an open investigation about this. And it frustrates me that it had to go to that extreme, that we had to involve the Nashua Police in the AG's office. When I went and met with Mike Carignan, his comment to me was, why didn't they just answer your question initially? Why didn't they just answer you? I said, because they don't. They don't tell you why. It's even up at the DRA. You know, we as citizens should be able to question what happened to $24 million. And, you know, why did the reduction happen? This Code 72 change that she says was verified by KRT, what does that mean? You're a lawyer, we got some lawyers in here. Did they verify that the change was correct? Did they verify, yes, the change was made? Did they verify, yes, it was done by that assessor? Doesn't mean they approved it. I don't know what that means. So, you know, it's enormously disappointing because I hear a lot of concerns from this chamber on the money I'm wasting in this city, looking at things like this. But I would waste so much less had there been some communication. Our PD wouldn't be involved with this. The AG wouldn't have been involved. The DRA wouldn't be looking at this. The right to knows wouldn't be
For
happening.
our public comment period, please.
Yep. I
Thank you.
just wanted to make you all aware of this because I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Remarks by members of the board. I'll start over here this time. Remarks? Alderman Tenza.
Just briefly, and I'd hope that Mr. T-Boom had stayed, but I just wanted to congratulate him. He sent an email to the board as to other members regarding a sculpture that has been included at the Holocaust Memorial over off of Main Street. It's an important memorial for the city. I credit his passion in bringing that for people to view and for all of us to continue to remember the awful tragedy that was the Holocaust. So if people have a chance, please go over, view the whole memorial, but in particular, the new sculpture that's dedicated to the children who died in the Holocaust. Thank you.
Alderwoman Melissa
Yes,
Goya.
I would like to join Alderman Tenza in congratulating Mr. T-Boom on the restoration of that sculpture. And certainly, I think all of us who have attended events there, who have talked to Mr. T-Boom, know how passionate he is about the plight of children during the Holocaust. So I was happy to see he had gotten that restored. And then just a reminder that the Brian McCarthy Foundation fundraiser is coming up on October 5th at the Bounty from 7 to 11 p.m. And tickets are available online and will be available at the door. There will be a cash bar, live music, and some silent auction items as well as raffle items. And as I stated a couple weeks ago, this is really the beginning of fundraising for the foundation, which is focused on supporting STEM activities and scholarships for students at Nashua High North and South. Thank you.
Alderman Lopez.
First, I'd like to start by congratulating Great American Downtown on another great dinner on downtown event. It was really well run. I know the mayor volunteered. I was there as well. I'd like to thank Shawnee for telling me I had to wear a black T-shirt on an 87-degree day. That was great. It was a really great event. It was very well run. All of the chefs did an amazing job with their contributing restaurants and the meals that they prepared. The participants all very much enjoyed it, as well as the performances, the show, all that kind of stuff. I encourage anybody to attend it next year if they're able. If you missed it this year, then you missed out on like quite a snack. And then additionally, I wanted to call attention to this Saturday. The Out of the Darkness Walk is going to be at Greeley Park. It starts at 9 a.m. The walk begins at 10 a.m. and then it ends at 1 p.m. The Out of the Darkness Walk is hosted by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I participated in it for several years. It raises awareness of a major issue in our community, but it also provides support and solidarity to people who've been impacted by that issue. And I think we need to have more community conversation about that. Again, I know the mayor is taking steps to lead in that direction. So if you want to get involved immediately and support a very worthy cause, that's this Saturday. It's the Out of the Darkness Walk at Greeley Park. The walk starts at 10 and then it ends at 1.
Alderman Clee.
Yes, I'd like to start by thanking my fellow members here for your support and your kindness during all that I've been going through with this cat thing. And I truly hope that it's literally put to bed and I don't have to see it again and the phone calls stop. But I'd also like to mention something that I mentioned at the previous one. I really was so proud when I sat as a state rep in a meeting that had DRA and the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and hear that the go-to boots on the ground person was someone who worked in our assessor's office, Louise Brown, and I really do want to take the time to thank her again. It did make me feel wonderful, and they really had kind things to say. And I know that we've gotten a lot of bad press and so on, but I think they're heading towards the right direction, and I think time will prove that out. So thank you. Oh, and one more thing. I'd like to welcome Ms. Lovering as our city clerk and our new legislative manager. And Donna, I'm so sorry I don't know your last name.
Graham.
Graham, thank you so much.
Alderman Gathright.
I have an announcement that on October 11th, the Reverend William Barber, who is the co-chair for the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, he'll be here in Nashua at First Baptist Church, 121 Manchester Street at 5 p.m., 5:30 p.m. on October 11th. And I would suggest that folks come out and celebrate and have a good time. A lot of music and everything.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. First, I would like to congratulate all those who were appointed to the committees. It was an exhaustive list. Thank you for serving. The second thing is the mayor starting this mental health. I'd like to thank the mayor for doing that because we had one police officer that tragically took his life. And we had a month earlier, a firefighter took his life. And a year before that, another firefighter took his life. For such a small percentage group, it's acute, you know. And the fact that the mayor was to recognize that, I think that is good, as well as the other residents of our city. So I think that's fantastic. I'd like to thank Chief Rhodes and for bringing the newest addition to Nashua Fire Rescue, the fire truck tonight. I personally enjoy fire trucks. I wonder why. I want you to all notice I have my steamer tie on tonight to welcome the new apparatus. But I wish the vehicle luck, that it takes the firefighters to their appointed watch and that they all come back safely. One of the last things I'd like to mention, I don't know who did it, but whoever put that VO bike on that stanchion in the middle of the river needs to be accommodated. That was quite a feat. I enjoyed it. And also the ones who are on Facebook or anything else doing the artwork. I never thought I would see E.T. on a VO ride on the backdrop of Main Street, but it was very good.
Apparently
And
he has a
also
credit
too
card.
with Alderman Malaysia Goja, the Brian McCarthy Foundation, Karen McNally is the entertainment. And if you need another excuse to go, there's grants, gifts, I should say, with you can bid on them and everything else. So it's going to be a grand time. So hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. I, too, would like to welcome Donna Graham, our new Legislative Affairs Manager. She's going to be doing a great job for us. She already is. So welcome, and thank you for being here. Committee announcements. Alderman O'Brien.
Tomorrow night, 9:25 at 7 p.m. here in the Automatic Chamber will be a meeting of infrastructure. You're all welcome. They're usually lots of fun. Thank you.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes, this coming Thursday, we have the 26th at Nashua High North, we have a joint special school building committee. We're going to be giving some results of some of the tests that have been done on all the 4 sites and some preliminary high-level layouts of potential changes to the schools. However, the final report is going to be available for a joint special on October 9th at Nashua High North. And that's when the architect will be presenting the final report. That is not the night when a final decision is going to be made. After that report comes out and everyone will get a copy, and the Board of Aldermen, the Board of Education, the mayor, and others. And then we will have a review with the Board of Education to get comments from them on what was presented. And then we are going to have a public meeting at some point so the members of the public can come and see what the findings are. And after all that's collected, then we'll have a yet-to-be-determined date, but a joint special school building committee meeting to make the final decision on which way we're heading.
Further committee announcements? Seeing none? Have a
Motion to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 9:43 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I told you.